Lena Cruz said, "The air felt too still when I stepped out of the airport, like the city knew something I didn't." She followed Fareed through the glowing arrivals hall while his polished smile stayed fixed, as if it had been rehearsed long before she met him. She kept telling herself his promise of luxury work was real, yet each step closer to the waiting car made her heartbeat tighten. When he opened the door, she saw two silent women inside, their eyes lowered, their hands folded like they were afraid to move. Lena felt a cold tremor, but tried to hide it, pretending the welcome was normal. The ride through neon towers felt too quiet, and every time she caught Fareed staring at her reflection in the window, she felt a warning she couldn't explain. Something about the silence of the women beside her pushed a question she didn't want to ask. What had she stepped into? Why did their fear feel practiced? And what was she not supposed to see tonight? Lena Cruz said. The villa looked peaceful from the outside, but the quiet felt wrong. She followed Fareed through a polished hallway where every sound seemed swallowed by thick walls. The women who had ridden with her slipped away without a word, disappearing behind a locked door that clicked too quickly. Fareed walked ahead with slow confidence, pointing to a guest room as if offering a reward. She tried to smile, yet something inside her tightened when she noticed a camera tucked high in the corner, its small red light blinking. She wondered why a simple home needed that much watching. A faint whisper echoed from deeper inside, like someone warning her to stop before she stepped too far. She tried asking where the other women slept, but Fareed answered with polite vagueness that sounded too rehearsed. Her breath thinned as she realized the luxury she imagined was missing, something important. Freedom, Lena Cruz said. Something in the air felt heavy, like the walls carried secrets. She tried exploring the room Fareed assigned her, but every drawer was empty, every window sealed, and every surface spotless in a way that felt unnatural. Unnatural. She stepped into the hallway again and saw a woman carrying laundry with her eyes fixed firmly on the ground. When Lena quietly greeted her, the woman only shook her head and hurried away. Lena sensed fear in her hurried steps, the kind of fear that had lived there long before she arrived. A soft thud echoed from behind a locked storage door, a sound Lena could not explain. She reached for the handle, but it didn't move. Her pulse tightened, and she backed away, realizing she was being watched, even when she couldn't see who was looking. Lena Cruz said, "I kept hearing soft whispers, like someone urging me to listen." She wandered toward the kitchen, hoping to find something normal, but even the clatter of dishes sounded restrained. A woman stood at the counter washing plates with slow, careful movements, her eyes flicking toward the doorway every few seconds. When Lena asked where everyone came from, the woman barely whispered a single word. Locked. Lena stepped closer, but the woman shook her head nervously and looked toward a side door that was bolted from the outside. Lena felt a chill sweep through her as she realized the fear was not random. It was routine. Whatever lived inside these walls had shaped every quiet gesture, every lowered gaze, and every unfinished sentence. Lena Cruz said. The woman appeared suddenly, as if pulled from shadows. Maya Torres stood in the hallway, eyes sharp despite exhaustion. She motioned for Lena to move closer, checking both ends of the hall before speaking. Her voice trembled, not from weakness but from urgency. She told Lena that promises made to women who entered this villa never matched the reality waiting behind locked doors. Lena felt her stomach twist as Maya warned her not to hand over her passport, no matter what Fareed claimed. The fear in Maya's eyes told a story Lena wasn't ready to face, a story of women who trusted the wrong smile and vanished. Lena's pulse raced as she realized this was no misunderstanding. This was a trap, and she had already stepped inside. Lena Cruz said the morning felt calm. But the calm didn't feel real. She stepped into the hallway where Farid waited with a neatly folded contract and a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. He told her the company needed her passport for processing, speaking so casually that refusing felt rude, yet something inside her pushed back. She asked if she could keep it until she settled in, but his smile thinned, and the silence that followed felt heavier than the walls around them. When she hesitated, he stepped closer, lowering his voice until the words felt like pressure against her skin. He said rules were strict, and no one worked without surrendering documents. Lena felt the ground slide beneath her, as she realized this was not a request. The fear in her stomach grew when she remembered Maya's urgent warning. If she handed over the passport, she would disappear inside this place just like the others. Lena Cruz said, "The rules kept rising like walls I couldn't see until I hit them." Farid walked her through the villa, as if giving a tour, yet every path he pointed to ended in a locked door, and every window carried thick curtains that never opened. He listed tasks she would perform, each more demanding than the last, and told her there were cameras only for safety, though their red lights never stopped blinking. When she asked about days off, he answered with a pleasant laugh that sounded hollow, insisting she would learn the schedule soon. A sinking feeling grew in her chest when she noticed the other women move silently from room to room, their steps light, their voices gone. The freedom she imagined seemed distant, fading behind each rule he recited. She realized this wasn't a job. It was control, disguised as routine. Lena Cruz said, "The women barely spoke, but their silence spoke enough." She stepped into the laundry room where a group of maids folded clothes with mechanical precision, their eyes down and shoulders tense. When she greeted them softly, one looked up long enough for Lena to see. Fear etched deep across her expression. Lena tried asking how long they had been there, but the room froze, and the woman shook her head rapidly before returning to her work. A guard-like figure stepped into the doorway moments later, his presence enough to tighten every posture. Lena felt a chill run through her as she understood the women weren't avoiding her. They were protecting themselves. Every choice here was monitored, and every whisper carried a risk she couldn't yet measure. Lena Cruz said, "By afternoon, the villa felt smaller than it had in the morning. Every corridor seemed to narrow each time she passed through, and every locked door felt like a reminder that she was no longer free to leave." Maya appeared again, moving quickly and speaking only when corners were empty. She warned Lena that Farid expected obedience and that any resistance was met with punishment disguised as discipline. Lena felt fear tighten around her ribs as Maya pointed to a reinforced door that led to a back area no one talked about. The women who disobeyed vanished beyond it, leaving no trace except rumors spoken in trembling whispers. Lena realized she wasn't just trapped. She was being shaped into someone who wouldn't fight back. But the fear inside her wasn't strong enough to silence the part that still wanted to run. Lena Cruz said, the day ended with a demand she couldn't refuse. Farid approached her after dinner, his tone polite but edged with warning as he repeated the request for her passport. She felt her pulse throb as she clutched it tighter, trying to think of a way to delay him. But the room seemed to shrink around her. He told her rules were rules, and the villa operated on trust. Yet his eyes held no trust, only ownership waiting to happen. Before she could answer, Khaled stepped into the room, his presence sealing the moment like a closing trap. Lena understood that this was the last thread of freedom she still held. If she surrendered it, she would become another silent figure walking these halls. The world outside the villa felt impossibly far away, and she feared she might never reach it again. Lena Cruz said, the night pressed heavier than the day ever did. She waited until the villa settled into silence, then slipped from her room with slow, careful steps, guided only by the warning Maya whispered earlier. Every creak of the floor felt like a shout, and every shadow looked alive. She moved toward the storage area she had noticed before, the one with the thud behind it. The door was usually locked, but tonight it hung slightly open, as though someone forgot to seal it or left it ajar on purpose. Inside, the air felt stale, heavy with secrets that didn't want to be found. She stepped deeper, and her breath caught when she saw rows of shelves lined with confiscated items, phones, chargers, small jewelry, and dozens of passports. The sight sank like a stone in her chest. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a strict workplace. It was a system built on stolen identities. Lena Cruz said, "I needed proof, even if I didn't know what I would do with it." She stepped closer to the shelves, running her fingers across the cracked leather covers of the passports. Each one felt like a piece of someone's stolen life. She noticed dates stretching back years, far longer than she imagined anyone could survive here. A soft noise behind her made her spin, heart pounding, but it was only Maya, her face pale and eyes wide with fear. Maya whispered that she wasn't supposed to be here, and that Khaled checked this room often. Lena showed her one of the passports, and Maya's expression tightened. She whispered that the women who resisted had their documents hidden here, their exit erased as easily as turning a key. Lena realized that if Farid or Khaled discovered them, neither would see daylight again. Lena Cruz said. Maya's voice carried a weight that felt older than her. Maya explained that she had once believed Farid's promises too, stepping into Dubai with dreams of supporting her family just like Lena. She described how quickly kindness turned into commands, and how commands turned into threats. Lena listened as Maya spoke of women who tried to escape only to be dragged into the back area behind the steel door none of them ever saw again. Maya said she survived this long only by staying quiet, watching carefully, and waiting for someone who might help. Lena felt the truth settle like ice. She wasn't a new worker. She was the next missing woman in a long line. The room around her suddenly felt like a cage, disguised as storage. Lena Cruz said, if there was a way out, it lived in what they stole. She began scanning the shelves again, searching for patterns, numbers, labels, anything that showed how far the operation reached. She found ledgers filled with coded entries, each one marked with dates and symbols that didn't make sense at first. Maya explained that the marks represented rotation schedules, transport dates, and women who had been moved. The ones without marks were never seen again. Lena's hands trembled as she flipped through the pages, understanding that this wasn't just a villa. It was part of something bigger, something built to hide people in plain sight. Maya whispered that if they waited too long, they would become names in these ledgers too. Nothing more than entries in someone else's system. Lena Cruz said, we needed a plan before the walls closed in. Maya urged her to leave the room immediately, reminding her that Khaled often checked on the storage late at night. Lena tucked one of the coded pages beneath her shirt, knowing it was dangerous, but also knowing it was their only leverage. They slipped into the hallway just as faint footsteps approached from the other end. Panic rose between them, pushing them toward a narrow stairwell that descended into deeper shadows. Lena felt her heart crash against her ribs as they hid behind the railing, listening to Khaled enter the storage room. His slow footsteps and sharp breaths filled the silence, a reminder that discovery meant disappearance. Lena knew the danger had grown, but so had her resolve. She would not become another silent woman behind a locked door. Lena Cruz said, hope felt dangerous, but losing it felt worse. She sat beside Maya in a dim corner of the villa, the coded page between them like a fragile lifeline. Maya whispered that she had studied the delivery routes for months, memorizing the schedule of supply trucks that came through the back gate. If they could slip out while workers unloaded crates, they might reach a main road before anyone noticed. Lena listened with her pulse racing, imagining the streetlights, the sound of passing cars, the world beyond the villa walls. But doubt dug at her. She feared the moment their footsteps crossed the threshold, alarms would rise, doors would slam, and the villa would swallow them whole. Still, the thought of staying felt worse. Maya insisted this was their only chance, and Lena understood. Freedom wasn't offered here. It had to be taken. Lena Cruz said, "We practiced the plan like a whisper, careful and quick." Maya guided her through the service corridors, pointing out blind spots between cameras and the narrow door that led to the loading area. They moved with slow, deliberate steps, memorizing which floorboards creaked and how long the guards lingered during shifts. Lena felt her heart hammering as they rehearsed the timing. They would slip out during the afternoon delivery, blend in with the noise and movement, and crawl behind stacked crates until they reached the gate. Maya reminded her that hesitation could cost them everything. Lena swallowed hard, feeling fear and determination twist together inside her. The villa no longer looked like a home, but a maze designed to keep them lost. She knew the plan was thin, risky, and desperate, but desperation was all they had left. Lena Cruz said, "When the moment came, the villa felt alive with danger." The rumble of the delivery truck echoed through the back gate, its engine masking their footsteps. Maya signaled her to move, and together they slipped through the narrow door into the loading zone. Workers unloaded crates with fast, practiced motions, barely noticing the shadows around them. Lena crouched behind a pallet of boxes, her breath shallow as she scanned the gate only meters away. Freedom sat right in front of her, close enough to touch, but one wrong sound would turn the entire scene against them. Every second stretched, every heartbeat too loud. Maya squeezed her hand, urging her forward. Lena prayed the route they practiced was enough, that the villa wouldn't sense their escape before they crossed the threshold. Lena Cruz said, "The world outside was only one step away, but danger was closer." As they moved between crates, a loud clatter broke the rhythm of the workers. A box slipped from a man's hands and crashed to the ground, sending every head turning. Lena froze, hoping no one noticed the two figures slipping through the shadows. But Khaled appeared at the edge of the loading area, his sharp eyes cutting through the noise. His gaze swept across the crates, landing dangerously close to where Lena hid. She felt Maya grip her arm, pulling her down lower. Khaled barked orders to the workers, demanding they secure the area. Lena's breath shook. A step too soon or too late would reveal them, and she knew Khaled wouldn't show mercy. The thin thread of escape stretched to breaking. Lena Cruz said, "We were seconds from freedom when everything fell apart." A worker shifted a crate, exposing their hiding spot just long enough for Khalid's eyes to lock onto them. His shout cut through the air, sharp and furious. Maya grabbed Lena's hand and ran, weaving between pallets, but the workers closed in fast. Lena felt her legs shaking as the gate slipped further away with each passing second. She heard Khaled and the men to block the exit, his voice echoing like a verdict. For a brief moment, she saw the world outside the gate. The road, the sky, the life she almost reached. But strong arms grabbed her before she crossed it, pulling her backward into the villa's grip. Maya screamed her name, but the sound vanished under Khaled's ray. Their first attempt had failed, and Lena knew the punishment would be harsh. Lena Cruz said, "The villa felt colder after the failed escape." She sat on the floor of a small storage room, wrists aching from the grip of the workers who dragged her back. Maya sat across from her, shaking, but her eyes stayed fierce despite the fear. They could hear Khaled arguing with Farid outside, both furious at the disruption. Every muffled word carried a threat. Lena felt the weight of their anger pressing against the walls, turning the room into a pressure chamber. She knew punishment would come, but she didn't know in what form. Maya leaned closer and whispered that sometimes failure wasn't the end. It was the start of the moment people begin to notice things they shouldn't. Lena didn't understand until Maya said she had overheard a guard mention police activity in the area earlier that week. It wasn't hope, not yet, but it was something. Lena Cruz said, "The shouting outside didn't stop, and each word felt like a countdown." Farid paced the hallway, slamming his hand against the wall while accusing the workers of negligence. Khaled demanded tighter control, insisting the women needed constant surveillance. Lena listened closely, her chest tightening when she heard her own name repeated with sharp anger. Maya whispered that Farid was deciding whether to move them to the back area. the place no one returned from. Lena felt terror rise in her throat, but then another voice cut through the argument, someone reporting that police were visiting nearby villas, checking papers and questioning staff. The hallway fell silent. Farid's tone shifted, carefully controlled, as if adjusting to something bigger than himself. Lena realized they feared outside attention. Maybe the world had begun to look in their direction. Officer Samira Al-Nouri said, "Something about this case felt wrong from the start." She stood outside a nearby villa, reviewing missing person reports from various countries, patterns she had started to map after receiving an anonymous tip. Each name connected to recruitment, promises that ended in silence. She knew the area housed wealthy employers, but there were too many complaints about withheld documents, too many rumors about workers who vanished. She walked past gleaming gates and spotless gardens with a growing sense of unease. When she approached the villa where Lena and Maya were trapped, she noticed that the security cameras pointed outward instead of inward. It was a small detail, but enough to make her stop. She felt the quiet in the air, an unnatural stillness that suggested something was being hidden inside. Officer Samira Al-Nouri said, "Silence often points to the loudest secrets." She walked along the villa perimeter, studying the walls and windows. There were no open curtains, no sounds of movement, and not a single worker outside despite the busy hour. She approached the gate and knocked firmly, waiting for a response that didn't come. A guard eventually opened it a crack, his eyes darting as if unsure what she already knew. Samira asked routine questions about staffing and documentation, but the guard's stiff body language told her more than his words. Something inside the villa wasn't meant to be seen. She made a note to return with a formal inspection order. When she turned to leave, she caught a faint movement in an upstairs window, a shadow pulling away as if afraid to be noticed. She knew then that someone inside needed help. Lena Cruz said, "For the first time since arriving, I felt the smallest spark of hope." Maya nudged her toward the storage room door, whispering that she had seen a woman in uniform outside through a tiny window in the hallway. Lena pressed her ear to the door, catching traces of conversation, but the workers dragged them away before she heard more. Maya insisted that the presence of an officer meant someone had spoken up, maybe a neighbor, maybe one of the women Farid had moved before. Lena held onto the thought like a fragile lifeline. If the police were nearby, the villa's grip might weaken. But she also knew Farid and Khaled would not let things slip easily. Their fear of exposure made them more dangerous. The chance of rescue felt close, yet so did the threat of disappearing before help could arrive. Lena Cruz said, "The tension in the villa felt like a storm waiting to break." Farid and Khaled ordered tighter surveillance after the officer's visit, pacing the halls with sharp steps that echoed like warnings. Lena and Maya stayed close, whispering about the coded page Lena had hidden beneath her mattress. They knew it was their only chance to prove what was happening inside these walls. But the atmosphere shifted that night. The guards moved faster, the doors slammed harder, and every worker looked over their shoulder as if danger hovered behind them. Lena felt the villa tightening around her, preparing to crush any resistance. Maya whispered that if they had one more chance to escape, they had to take it. The storm was coming from both sides, the traffickers guarding their secrets and the police drawing closer. Lena sensed the moment of truth approaching, ready to tear the villa open. Officer Samira Al-Nouri said, "When people try to hide something, they always leave a small door open." She returned to the area with a formal inspection order, accompanied by 2 officers who carried body cameras. She approached the same villa gate, noticing fresh tire marks on the pavement and hastily rearranged decorations meant to look welcoming. The guard hesitated longer before opening the door, his jaw tight and eyes restless. Samira stepped inside without waiting for permission, letting her instincts guide her as she scanned the entryway. It was too clean, too still, as if the house practiced silence. She sensed fear nearby, not her own, but from someone who wanted to speak but couldn't. She signaled her team to spread out, Whatever secret the villa held was close, pulsing behind its polished walls. Lena Cruz said, "The moment I heard footsteps change, I knew someone new was inside." She and Maya were being led toward the back area by one of the guards, their wrists held tightly as punishment for the escape attempt. The guard stopped suddenly when voices echoed from the front hall. Firm, confident voices that didn't belong to Farid or Khaled. Maya's eyes widened and Lena felt her chest flood with hope and terror all at once. If the officers found them now, they could be saved. But if Khaled reached them first, everything would end here. The guard tightened his grip as if deciding whether to act or run. Lena felt that this instant held her future, balanced on a fragile edge. She whispered to Maya that they had to make themselves heard before the villa swallowed the chance. Officer Samira Al-Nuri said, "Houses like this always have a way of trapping the truth." She searched room after room, noticing small signs, extra shoes that didn't match the number of workers claimed, faint scratches near locked doors, the camera pointing inward instead of out. Her instincts sharpened when she spotted a narrow hallway leading toward the back area, the air heavier there. She moved with purpose, feeling the tension build as she approached the corridor. A faint noise reached her ears, a short, sharp cry that was quickly cut off. She signaled her officers forward. Samira knew then that the silence she had sensed earlier wasn't emptiness. It was fear trying to stay hidden, and she was finally close enough to hear it. "No," Lena Cruz said. The moment the guard loosened his grip, we ran for our lives. The footsteps approaching from the front grew louder, firmer. Panic jolted through the guard holding them, and he turned his head for a brief second, long enough for Lena to break free. She grabbed Maya's hand and sprinted down the corridor, shouting as loudly as she could. Khaled appeared from the side, shouting back, his face twisted with fury as he lunged toward them. But the officers reached the intersection at the same moment, their shouts overpowering his. Chaos exploded through the hallway, voices clashing, guards scrambling, workers crying out. Lena felt someone grab her shoulders, but instead of being pulled back, she was steadied. She looked up and saw Samira's determined face. For the first time since arriving at the villa, Lena felt the walls lose their strength. Lena Cruz said. The moment the officers surrounded us, the villa finally felt powerless. She clung to Maya, trembling as Samira signaled the team to secure the building. The guards dropped their grip, and Farid backed away with a smile that tried to hide his panic. Lena watched Samira move through the chaos with sharp confidence, giving orders that cut through the noise. For the first time, Lena felt the strength of someone fighting for her rather than against her. Maya whispered that they were finally safe, but Lena could still feel the villa's fear pressing against her skin. She looked around at the other women emerging from locked rooms, their eyes wide with shock and disbelief. The truth was out now, and the silence that controlled them for years had shattered. Lena knew the world outside was waiting, but first, justice had to step through the broken doors. Officer Samira Al-Nuri said, "Every rescue carries a story that demands to be heard." She walked Lena and Maya through the villa's main hall, stepping around overturned crates and scattered documents. Officers collected evidence from the back rooms, while Samira made sure no one was left behind. She spoke calmly, assuring the women that they were now under protection, but her eyes carried fire at the sight of the confiscated passports and coded ledgers. Samira told them that the authorities had been tracking similar cases across the region, and this villa was the missing link. Lena felt her knees weaken when Samira said their courage and survival might help save others. Maya reached for Lena's hand, and for the first time the touch didn't carry fear, only relief. Lena Cruz said, "Leaving the villa felt like stepping out of a dream I never meant to enter." She followed the officers outside, blinking against the sunlight that felt too warm against her shaken skin. Maya walked beside her, slow and unsteady, as paramedics checked the injuries of the rescued women. Lena watched as they were given blankets, water, and soft words that felt unfamiliar after so much silence. She saw Farid escorted into a police vehicle, his calm facade cracked at last. The sight didn't bring satisfaction, only a quiet sadness for the lives he had broken. Lena realized freedom wasn't just about leaving the villa. It was about reclaiming the pieces of herself the place tried to take. She breathed deeply, letting the air fill the gaps fear once lived in. Officer Samira Al-Nuri said, "Cases like this don't end with an arrest. They begin with a voice." She later interviewed Lena and Maya at the station. Listen carefully as they described the hidden rooms, the coded ledgers, and the women who vanished without explanation. More. Ishi. Their testimonies formed the backbone of the investigation, connecting victims across multiple locations. Samira assured them they were now protected, and both would receive support and temporary housing. Lena watched her writing notes with steady determination, realizing this was the kind of strength that broke systems built on silence. Maya leaned back in her chair, exhausted but lighter, as if the weight she carried had finally begun to lift. The truth was being recorded, finally given a place outside the villa's walls. Lena Cruz said, "Healing doesn't erase what happened, but it gives the story somewhere else to go." Weeks later, she walked onto a small stage at a local support center, prepared to speak for the first time in public. Survivors gathered around her, some from the villa, others from places she had never heard of. Maya stood beside her, offering a quiet nod of support. Lena shared her story with simple words, letting the truth unfold at its own pace. She spoke of hope, fear, and the courage it took to reclaim a life stolen through lies. When she finished, the room stayed silent for a moment. Not from disbelief, but from understanding. Lena felt the weight inside her shift. She wasn't speaking as a victim anymore. She was speaking as someone who survived and refused to disappear.